This is the TK Radio Network.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
If you've got health insurance, you like your doctor, you like your plan, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan.
Saddam Hussein has gone to elaborate lengths, spent enormous sums, taken great risks to build and keep weapons of mass destruction.
Did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
What difference at this point does it make? Does it make? Does it make?
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
Well, hey, I'm the Skipper, and welcome to this week's edition of Trust but Verify, where we don't believe nothing unless we can see it, taste it, touch it, or smell it. We sure don't believe anything in what we hear around here, except, of course, on this program and the two programs right before us. You believe anything those people tell you. Well, with me tonight is my loyal partner in crime, Paul, and I'm pretty sure we have Rope Sparky in, our station manager and engineer, as well as Peter Gunn. If you've had the pleasure of listening to the Polite Society at 7 p.m. Eastern, you're familiar with these two New Hampshire Cowboys. And Angie's still under the weather, but we're hoping to get her back next week, and she's all better at that time. So anyway, how's everybody's temperature tonight? Everybody up and going, except for Angie, of course.
New Hampshire Cowboys. I like it. We're New Hampshire Cowboys, according to the Skipper now.
We are.
You knew that, though, right?
Well, yeah.
I tell you, Skipper, if you ever came up to New Hampshire, because I know what everybody thinks of the Northeast, and that's south of here. As soon as you get north of Massachusetts, we're just as country as you are.
Oh, yeah, no, I think I've discovered that just talking with you two. Either that or you guys are an anomaly. And that's not easy for somebody from Texas to even say that word. But anyway.
Yeah, no, actually, everybody here's got beards, grudgy old Caterpillar hats, and pickup trucks.
All right. Hey, Paul, we might get on a bus and get up there.
Actually, I wear a tie, a vest, and combat boots.
Yeah, you are an anomaly.
Yeah.
You sound like my first wife. Hey, listen, before I jump into the main event here, I feel sorry for Hatch. Missed some crazy stories this week. I usually try to boot him over to him, and I know he has a lot of people that feed him some great stuff. But did you all hear about the guy he was a climber, and he was on a 14,000-foot mountain in Colorado. It says Ryan Montoya was within 40 feet of the top of a 14,000-foot mountain when the ice under him collapsed, causing him to slide an estimated 1,500 to 2,000 feet down the east face of the mountain. He said he later told his mom he fell long enough to do a lot of talking, thinking, and yelling, and probably some other things that didn't smell so good. 2,000 feet.
2,000 feet. What did he?
It's like that.
What did he land on? I'm sorry, Paul. I didn't mean to step on you there.
No, you're cool.
Yeah, I know that, but I didn't mean to step on you.
Yeah.
Stating the obvious here. I don't know. He just slid down. And eventually, I think he kind of got buried under some snow for a while and fought his way out. But pretty lucky guy. He's like the guy in New York. I remember years ago that fell off the Empire State Building and lived to tell about it. He told everybody on the 101st floor and the 100th floor and the 99th floor. Okay, I got another one. I feel like I'm filling in for Hatch or Donnie. I can't tell. I just read this. Bill Clinton was doing a speech to the Brookings Institute, and his comment was, I think we need to bring simple personal decency and trust back to politics.
Oh.
You can't make this up.
That was kind of like, did you hear about Nancy Pelosi? She was all wound up because she wanted to read the Republicans' Obamacare repeal bill, and she hadn't gotten to read it, and she was all upset they were going to pass it with no one reading it. Wait a minute. I thought she was the one who said we had to pass the bill so we could see what was in it.
How soon they forget. But I got one more little tidbit I thought was equally funny. The number one book on the Amazon bestseller list right now, written by Michael Nolan, is titled Reasons to Vote for Democrats. It's 266 pages, and every one of them are blank. The books are flying off the shelf. There was a foreword by Ben Shapiro that, or an endorsement. He had one word: thorough. All right. Well, that's all the fun stuff I could find during commercial breaks. Well, Paul and I have done a little research on this thing called the Iron Triangle. I don't know if other guys have heard about this. To be real honest, I'd heard the term, but I didn't know exactly what it meant. But I'll just give the down and dirty explanation here in one little paragraph. It says, in the United States politics, the Iron Triangle comprises policy-making relationships among the congressional committees, the bureaucracy, and interest groups. So that's it. And they feed one another. I mean, the bottom line is, one hand washes the other. And, of course, policy relationships being the key to that particular definition. And so the issues that come before government are now so vast and complex that everything's broken down into small government units like congressional committees, which are in charge of specific areas of policymaking. Well, you know what happens when that happens. Things get done in back rooms, and it's real easy for influence to work its way in there because C-SPAN's not covering those meetings, is it?
Nope.
Cover the big stuff. So, had y'all heard of the Iron Triangle? Is that
I had.
Triangle in Texas is the one they ring when it's time for dinner.
The only Iron Triangle I've ever heard of was had to do with a military maneuver of some sort. I wasn't aware that there was a political Iron Triangle of some sort.
Yeah, no, I've always heard it was the relationship between bureaucracy, congressmen, and lobbyists.
Oh.
And it's always something that benefits the three of them.
Shocker.
Yeah. I liken it more to the Bermuda Triangle. Just your money heads that way and disappears. Never to be seen again.
I call BS on the Bermuda Triangle. I've swam in it and I'm still here. I'm just as lost as when I got in it.
I flew through it several times, and I think I'm still. I'm somewhere. I don't know. Maybe I'm somewhere else.
Actually, it emailed me and said, "Don't do that again."
So okay, well, let's take these one at a time, just for fun. So let's talk about the interest groups in this triangle. They're there. They've become they have this term called constituencies and consumers, and essentially with the government bureaucracy or anyone else, if technically we should be the consumers from government, right? They're supposed to provide things, and I guess they're not supposed to provide things, but that's what they do anymore, and to our benefit, and we consume whatever it is they provide.
Sure.
But then they talk about constituencies, and constituencies are a little different in that constituency is a group that can give you something back, essentially. So for the interest on the interest groups, we know what they do with Congress. They influence votes. They can influence real elections. I mean, House, do we have a 95% re-election rate of incumbents that run for office, obviously. If it wasn't for a whole lot of backroom dealing and money that's going out there. As a matter of fact, I did a little research. Does anybody want to hazard a guess if you took everybody that ran for a federal office in 2016, the total amount of money that was spent? Anybody want to take a shot at how many beans are in that jar?
Geez. When we're talking about federal, it's got to have a whole bunch of zeros. It really does.
$6.8 billion.
Oh, good grief.
So think about that. I mean, that's a lot of money per voter here. Or for a citizen, we can't compete with that.
Yep.
Now, money didn't come from us, so it comes from places like interest groups. And my question is there a way we can change this process?
Yes.
Without changing the lax rules governing political contributions? Because obviously the Supreme Court's kind of opened that door. If a corporation's a citizen.
Well, The Supreme Court, you're talking about Citizens United, right? Because the whole money in politics thing, I don't know that there's really a big problem with more money going into politics. I mean, that's not the problem. The problem, I believe, is the amount of power that politics has over our lives. So I think the answer is to remove their power, and the money will follow.
How would you do that?
I would repeal the 16th Amendment. Pure and simple. I mean, everybody, a lot of people will argue with me that the 16th would not have as big an effect as repealing the 17th Amendment, but I think the two of those are the two biggest culprits as to why we're in the predicament that we are in. Are you familiar with the 16th?
Well, I was running through my memory and I was hitting the wall.
So the 16th Amendment basically says that the federal government can tax you for any reason, for any purpose, without regard to apportionment. And part of what that means is that the 16th Amendment is what gave us lobbyists. But prior to the 16th Amendment, lobbyists did not exist. And the reason why they didn't exist was because the federal government had no power to give exemptions or breaks or disproportionately less tax, which is part of, they can tax for any purpose, also includes the lack of tax. So without the 16th Amendment, there's no going to Washington to lobby for your tax-favorable thing because the government has no power to tax disproportionately. And that's basically sums it up. That's what gave us our lobbyists. That's what gave us, Lockheed Martin headquarters in Washington, D.C.
What would you do about senators then if you want to do something with the 17th Amendment? Would you have them appointed at the state level? Or
I am not worried so much about the 17th as I am about the 16th, because what the 17th did, the way it was originally structured was the people vote directly for the House representative. The states vote or appoint the Senate representative. So the people had a voice, the state had a voice, and then the president executed the laws set forth by the representatives of the people and the Senate. The 17th Amendment made it so that the people assigned both the House and the Senate.
right.
And repealing that would just mean that the states would start to appoint the senators again rather than people voting for them directly. I don't see that that's going to fix a whole lot because the corruption will just find a new way to the path that they want to achieve. So instead of having corrupt senators pander to the people, they're just going to pander to the states. To a certain extent, they already do. So without getting rid of that 16th Amendment, the 17th Amendment really has no point in repealing.
I think Paul would agree with me.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think I think the money trail's the way to go. Because if you eliminate that flow of cash, you're gonna. The senators, is a non-issue at that point.
Right.
But if you don't eliminate the 17th Amendment instead of 16th Amendment, well, that money's just going to flow through a different channel.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Going to be the same money.
Yeah.
It's going to go, it's going to be slightly more localized as it goes through, your state representatives or whoever's, making the
right.
pick for the senators. So, I think the cash is the key to the whole issue.
That's that would be a program in itself in terms of getting there to repeal that. We're certainly not going to get any help from Congress. I can remember when the flat tax came up, and I think at least one of the times it came up, it was one of our representatives down here, Dick Armey, that kept beating on that drum, and of course it went nowhere. And just all kinds of arguments against it one way or another. But as long as there's money in politics, you remember how long ago was it? It wasn't maybe a decade or so ago. There was some talk about getting money out of politics by just allocating a certain amount of money, federal dollars, to each candidate, and that's all they got. Of course, the media went berserk because they make bazillions of dollars every time there's an election, which is why they like to keep them close, keep people in the game. But I agree with you. If we could wave a magic wand, but then we're going to have a constitutional convention to get all that done. So.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd be very leery of a constitutional convention.
And I agree with that as
That
well.
could go off the rails quickly.
Right.
Yeah, that's such a wild card. I mean, there are aspects of it that I'm really for, but once you open up that box, you don't know what's going to come up out of there.
That's right. And a lot of people don't want to hear that because they're looking for a quick fix, but that just doesn't work. Well, here's a little factoid to throw in there for everyone to know that we know that people in Congress are most of the people in Congress, over 50% of them anyway, are millionaires, but the average person in Congress net worth is 18 times more than the average American household. I mean, 50-something thousand versus $1 million. You just can't compete. There's no way we could throw enough money. Now, this last election, money didn't win it. Energy and people's desire for change trumped all the money that was spent, much to the disdain of Mr. Bush, who had a bunch of it. But anyway, so interest groups, if we're looking at this corner of the triangle, here's the other thing they do, and boy, you talk about a double-edged sword. This is supposed to be a positive. They provide experts, and as we know, they often are so good and so smart, they write the legislation for people in Congress. And we know what happens when that happens, because when you got lobbyists writing legislation, it's going to go in the direction you think it's going to go. So, I mean, that happens. It happens all the time. Now, the argument is, well, we can't afford in Congress, the bureaucrats can't afford it. We can't afford our own people to help write policies. Congress can't afford to hire people to write all these laws. So we have to have these experts come in here and do this for us. My question is, if the politicians and bureaucrats say they can't afford the expertise and all in the administrative assistance, would the American people be better off footing the bill than allowing the fox in the hen house?
I think that the question would be, then why are you in the office? If you cannot accomplish this goal as the government, as our elected officials, why are you in the job?
Well, they're just saying they don't. There's so much going on. It's so complicated. There's so many bills, and they expect us to read some of them. That we have to have experts in here to help us with. A congressman sitting there, and to be honest, that's got to be tough. If you're sitting there and you're having to vote on a myriad of issues, from everything from oil to labor to the environment to whatever, you can't know everything.
That is true.
Well, you can't.
No,
go ahead.
The complexity is definitely there, and you couple that complexity with the endless campaign cycle. You're spending if you're in Congress, you're spending probably at least better than 50% of your time, begging for the money. But to me, the real issue is, this should be a non-issue if we took the government back down to the enumerated powers.
There you go. If we, how's that euphemism go? We want a government small enough that we can drown it in a bathtub. And if government is shrunk down to that level, then you should have all the expertise you need to do the job, and your job needs to be fairly simple.
Help me here understand, what could you be lobbying for that your expertise is needed that we do not have a government agency with that expertise currently?
Okay.
I mean, we mentioned the environment. Well,
Yep.
Okay, fine. And I'm not necessarily opposed to having these people write some potential legislation other than, first of all, it needs to be out there that, hey, this piece of legislation was authored by this group. And then, okay, fine, you have an environmental procedure. Okay, great, we'll take a look at this. And then you go over and you go to your experts at the EPA that you're paying for and say, guys, what do you think of this? And then get somebody who is theoretically more neutral to take a look at it and say, "Yep, this is a good idea," or "Nope, that's a bad idea." OSHA does this, by the way.
Yeah,
they'll put out a they will when they're going to propose a rule, they tend to go to industry groups, like just without getting bogged down in the minutia of it, the elevator industry, American elevator industry, got involved with a particular piece of legislation that would affect guys working in elevator pits.
Right.
And OSHA did say, well, tell us what you got and we'll take it into consideration. But they didn't say, hey, we're going to write this new law and give it to you guys and you guys are going to get it passed. So, I mean, there is room for that expertise, but you need to acknowledge that that's where you got the expertise and then have a government agency look over.
But aren't those the experts that we're referring to? I mean, aren't the government experts the ones that we're referring to with regards to they don't have enough experts?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't tell me that.
Aren't you saying, Peter, that we've got all these people on the payroll and all these agencies, and we got a bunch of them? Why don't we have people in there that know what's going on?
Yeah, and I mean, I get that they can't all come up with it because they're kind of glass bubbled in the, in the fact that they're, in their agency, but at least they could look over the merits of what's being proposed by somebody from the industry.
Well, that brings up an interesting point because one of the criticisms and supposedly benefits of this Iron Triangle is that people from the outside, from the interest groups, and these are the ones that are going in and writing this stuff, they sometimes get hired and then they work in the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know about the people that were either, in politics or in government that managed to land a cush job, out there somewhere because they've been playing ball with LTV or some, Bell Helicopter or some group like that.
Sure.
So you get some of those people in there. I think it's a good point. What do we have in there if we don't have experts? What do we have in the Department of Energy?
Did you ever
have energy experts?
Did you ever see the movie Wag the Dog?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, anyway, when some guy comes up to De Niro and says, "Well, our satellites aren't detecting, this war in Albania that they made up," and he goes, "Well, if they're not detecting it, what good are they? And furthermore to the point, what good are you? If you guys can't find this war, why do we need you?" I mean, of course, they made up the war; it didn't exist. But he raised him an interesting point: is that you're going to go off and tell everyone you can't find a war that everyone knows is going on, and it backed him off for a little bit.
We know that oversight doesn't seem to work in Congress. We see examples of it not working constantly. But I had a thought when I was writing this up, and one is this process that we're talking about is fraught with corruption and waste and all those other negative words. Wonder if there's any possibility of having outside oversight as people are drawing these things up, and an objective expert. Here we go again. Who can look at the finished product and say, hey, you know what, this is a one-sided deal here. I'm sure this is good for you, but this isn't necessarily good for the, for the people of America or
how do you do
for the
that?
Businesses.
How do you do that, though? I mean,
that's what they're claiming to have right now. I mean, you look at, companies like Goldman who are, have the revolving door between, their upper echelon of executives and the federal government and their banking systems. I mean, that's what they're supposed to be, the unbiased outside experts, but they're steering it towards their own ends because they know as soon as they get out of the government, they're going to be back in the private sector, and they're going to be making bank off of the stuff that they were overseeing while they were in there.
Oh yeah.
I keep using this same analogy over and over, and I think it applies here. Remember the movie War Games?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And do you remember well, for those who don't know, it was about a computer that's its job was to figure out how to win thermonuclear warfare, right? So it would go through all of these scenarios. In the final conclusion, on how to win thermonuclear warfare, which is what we're playing here, is you don't play. That's the only way. And my point being is there's no outside outside oversight. There's no internal oversight. There's no oversight that can be had that will achieve the goals that we want. The only way to achieve the goals that we want is to not let them have the power to be corrupt in the first place.
How would you reverse that because it's already there?
You would have to repeal the 16th Amendment. It comes back to the money again.
I have a slightly different
pony, aren't you?
Yeah, kind of.
I have a slightly different
right.
thought on it. Is that one of the things I think is the huge problem is how long you can be in Congress, because you're going to get people who get real cozy in it. They get to figure out where the money's coming from and all this other stuff. It's going to be a lot harder for companies when they have to keep buying politicians every couple of years because they have to buy new ones. And
which is why they want to move the the control away from federal government, move it up to a world government or whatever. So
and I think coupled with term limits is there needs to be a law that the Congress has to abide by the laws that they're making.
Agreed.
Congress. I mean, they're currently exempt from insider trading. They're making the rules, and they've exempted themselves from insider trading. Look at Obamacare. They've got their own health care system, and they're making the rules for everybody else. It doesn't make sense.
I agree with you, Paul, but I want to just caveat what you're saying. They do play by the same rules that you and I play with. It's just that they're writing the rules, and they're writing the rules to be exempt from themselves. So I think that to caveat what you're saying, they should not be allowed to write exemptions for themselves in the law.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it has the law has to be equally weighted across the board.
I agree. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. As a matter of fact, I think that we should do the inverse. We should have a constitutional amendment that multiplies the penalty for government people who violate the law. That's what I think.
Yeah, I'd vote for that.
Yeah.
One of the, of course, obviously my end of the world is 2A stuff, but several years ago they were trying to pass a legislation, the Blair Holt legislation, and it was put forth by Representative Bobby Rush from Chicago. And here it is. This is a man putting forth gun legislation who had gone to jail on weapons charges for supplying weapons to the Black Panthers. And so you have a guy who cannot possibly own a gun passing gun legislation. And I've always said that, anyone who runs for Congress should be able to pass, don't have to own one, but be able to pass the background check to own a firearm. And most of them can't because a lot of them are convicted felons. And yet they get to pass laws on how suitable I am and what background checks I have to pass. It's ridiculous.
Well, the whole point, I guess, of bringing this up is to show how difficult it is to break this triangle. I mean, in nature, in family systems, in any kind of system, the triangle is the most, the most stable structure you can find. And this one's pretty stable, pretty hard to attack it. And it, like I said, one hand feeds the other. There's a lot of money. If you look at this last election and how upset people were on both sides of the aisle and how difficult it is right now for a new administration to actually accomplish anything. I read today that I was looking for my little notes. I hope I can remember some of these, but I just read where the tax breaks are out. Repealing Obamacare is out.
Oh my God!
Oh gosh,
what a nightmare that thing is.
And H-1B visas, well, we can't mess with those right now, even though we know they're taking a lot of American jobs. So what's happening is we have a new guy in town with his people, and he's running up against the Iron Triangle. We talk about the deep state. There's that. But there's also the Iron Triangle. These people know how to slow things down. If there's one thing that people know that have been in government for a while, that's how to bring everything to a halt or to a crawl and keep you from accomplishing anything. And the problem with this whole situation was with this last election, the voters felt a sense of urgency. and I think the candidate felt a sense of urgency. The people that are trying to keep the status quo are feeling a sense of urgency to make sure nothing urgent happens. So we're running,
that's well said.
We're running into this.
That's well said.
I visualize the Iron Triangle as a caltrop, if you know what a caltrop is.
No, I don't.
It's the thing you drop behind a car to pop its tires.
Yeah, or it's they used it anti-cavalry. It's basically a triangle. It's 4 spikes, and no matter how you throw it on the ground, one of those spikes is going to be upright, and the other 3 are going to form a solid base.
Okay.
So you have that, and no matter how you try to step on that thing and get rid of it, it's going to go through your foot.
Yep.
And you're gonna bleed.
Exactly. So don't step on it. Kick it.
Well, we have, at one point in time, many, many moons ago, maybe even before me, we had a media that would step up. They were independent at the time, certainly more independent than they are now. And they would step up and they would point the finger at things that weren't going well. I mean, look at even during World War II. I mean, Roosevelt didn't go unscathed. There was a lot of finger pointing. The media was all over things. It wasn't just R or D, but they're part of the triangle now. They're a special interest group. They're part of larger corporations who have special interests that are best served by things staying the way they are. They're not well served by any kind of radical changes in anything that resembles anti-global elite policies. So, we can't rely on the media anymore to investigate or report on government, corruption and wastefulness.
Nope.
Because they're part of this system.
Yep.
So I have an idea. I mean, it's, what if we came up with a regulation? What if Trump came up with an executive order? I'm sure it'd be sued immediately, but media companies have to stand alone. If you don't have independence and you don't have a license, because otherwise, what good are they? I mean, they're house dealers for whatever corporation they're working for. We've said this on this show before. There are 6 corporations that own over 90% of everything that we see and hear or read on the media.
Yeah, you want to know why that is?
Sure.
Government regulation. That is why we have a consolidation of the media complex. That is why we have 6 companies that essentially own the majority of all news outlets. It's as simple as that. And
unpack that. Yeah, explain that to me.
Well, every time all right, let's take radio, for instance, okay? Radio, the FCC, through FCC regulations, issues radio licenses. And in an effort to crush and to minimize conservative voice, the FCC has no longer or has discontinued issuing any new broadcast licenses, for the last 8 years. That includes low power ones. And they did
because
that.
The new guys are most likely to be conservative.
No, because more radio stations means more conservative voices. And the government supremacists do not want that. Even the low power stuff. They used to have a 100-watt low power system where you could go, hey, I want to entertain my little town, or my neighborhood, and they would issue a low power thing for 100 watts or less. I don't know if you're aware, but 100 watts barely get you 500 feet. They even stopped that. Now, rewind a little bit. Do you remember when they tried switching everything over to all radio broadcasts over to digital, over the air, because the over the air was getting too crowded, like the TV stations and whatnot, and they started giving away free converters, and that went a couple $1 billion over budget? Do you remember this?
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
just a few years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
In fact, I bought a new digital antenna from TV just yesterday.
What was their reasoning for switching from analog broadcast to digital?
Freeing up bandwidth was the stated reason.
Freeing up bandwidth so you could get more stations in. And then to have them discontinue issuance of new licenses, only on radio, mind you, which is not crowded. What does that tell you? That is a government regulation that crushes the growth of media outlets. It restricts restricts outlets.
And ironically on this point, at least ironic to me, is the fact this is almost an outcome of deregulation, because it wasn't that many years ago that, as a media conglomerate, you could only own, a few radio stations, a few newspapers. You couldn't go in and just corner the market like they can today. And when they took those regulations out of there, I don't know, I guess sometime between the mid '80s and mid '90s, maybe, and allowed you to open up and have the ability to own 50 or 100 radio stations. Then you saw that aggregation and the movement towards these large, almost monopolistic media companies, where they came in, they took over the airwaves, TV and radio. They picked up the local newspapers, or at least the big city local newspapers, choked out the small town local newspapers. So it's almost it's almost like a vicious cycle on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. But my question is there room to consider ensuring that these mass media, these people that have licenses, that they're not beholden to some other corporation, some large corporation? They're standalone.
Why do they need to be? All we need to do is,
because they're carrying water with for these other corporations. They're not a objective voice. They're not.
But do
you think that these stations are going to go after their owners? That never happens. Well,
you refer to licensing. Would not the licensing be itself the problem? Because in order to get a license, you have to get government permission. And when government chokes off the ability to get new licenses, that reduces the number of outlets that you can have. And I would also contend that it's not the corporation's involvement in owning media outlets. It's the government involvement in media outlets that's the problem. It's our own intelligence company influencing our media outlets. It's foreign governments influencing our media outlets. If you want to talk about Russian involvement, let's talk about Mexican involvement with the New York Times. Who owns more than half of the New York Times?
Carlos
Slim, who is not an American citizen. He is a Mexican, and he is openly hostile to our immigration system.
Right.
And works on behest of the Mexican government. So if you want to talk about...
Yeah, that's a good point. We had, a couple of months ago, we had almost a whole show on the growth of the Chinese in our movie industry.
Yeah,
it's really the same thing.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone the other day, Paul, and a young lady, and she was amazed to find out that all the theaters that she goes to are owned by the Chinese. It's not like they have a sign in the window.
No, they're not going to either.
Okay, well, let's switch gears here because you clearly are unable to solve the problem for me, so we're just going to move on.
Oh, I can.
Right. Well, there's a 16th Amendment, which I agree with. I'd be a fool not to at this point in time. Yeah. Okay, Stephen Hawking came out this week.
Oh, God.
I know. We know that he's a world government kind of guy, but he's fretting that our innate sense of aggression is working its way into artificial intelligence and, into weapon systems, which was kind of hard to disagree with some of that, and that it's going to reach a point where we're going to end up destroying ourselves. or one another, whatever.
Yep.
And he says the only solution is a referee at the world level.
Oh, yeah.
What?
He rolled that out, did he?
Yeah, he sure did. He's literally saying that the only solution to our big totalitarian government is a big totalitarian government.
To oversee and make sure it doesn't happen.
Right, yeah.
He's more worried about the innate aggression of human beings, and that he's afraid that, and this is really hard for me to defend on his behalf, but I'm going to do it.
Oh,
he's
got to do it in the voice, though.
I can't do that. Can't do that.
I call him Jules on shoulder.
Anyway, he's saying AI can grow so powerful that it can be capable of just killing us unintentionally. Your vacuum cleaner could run away.
Well, it's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Sure.
Right? Wasn't that Hal was supposed to make sure the mission accomplished, and he realized the only flaw in the mission were the humans.
Sorry, Hal, I can't do that. Or Dave, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Well, he admits that there's a possibility that that might not be the solution. That we could see problems with totalitarian government, coming in and being its own issue. But he does bring up a point. Elon Musk, they're buddies. They kind of share the same viewpoint on this. That unless humans decide to merge with machines, it's going to be difficult in the future for them to keep up.
There's a few brothels like that now.
I'm sure there's.
I would say Hawking has a unique perspective on being merged with a machine. Funny, but
that's rough.
He's actually he's one of the few people that's live in it.
I don't think he's wrong about the AI part of it. I really don't, because what are we basing our artificial intelligence on? Is we're basing it either on ourselves, right? We're trying to think it, make it look more human. Sooner or later, that's part of being a human. It'll get into, or we're going to create it to be better than human, and it's going to recognize that how flawed we really are.
Yeah.
So either way, I don't think he's wrong on that part of it. Having more flawed humans into the mix isn't going to help.
Hatching the.
But his point is that if you don't have one governing agency that can say, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, no, you can't develop that, that if it's just left up to these pesky sovereign nations, you're going to have China and Japan developing these crazy robots, and if they do it, everybody else is going to do it, and there's not going to be any limits put on it. You can't really rely on people's sense of some kind of morality affecting their decisions. They're going to do whatever works in the best interest of a company or that country. He makes a point. It's not something we can just say, well, that can't happen. But once again, even he says maybe that's not the solution. But what would be the solution? And it's out of control right now.
Actually, Isaac Asimov had the solution in 1939 when he wrote the 3 laws of robotics.
Absolutely.
The first one is a robot can do no harm to a human, and that's basically the other 2 laws that follow that are some have. Are tied into that, basically.
Yeah, they cannot harm us.
They can't harm us. They can't. They have to sacrifice themselves for our safety. I mean, you have to have something, at that level, and some basic rule set applied. But
is
somebody going to go outside of that? Obviously, yes.
Sure.
And if one person does, someone else will do something. Sure. Well, that kind of brings me to the next segment.
It's like the whole NSA spying thing and the CIA.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And the WikiLeaks.
If you look at WikiLeaks, the CIA and NSA, what all the DNI, all of them, they're looking at what they can do with all this cool stuff that's being developed. And hey, I can take control of I could take control of Peter's truck and make him crash into a tree, and nobody will know the difference. So, I mean, that's pretty much what we're talking about. We're talking about a computer system, a form of artificial intelligence, if you will, being used against humans. So, that to me, that tells me that we've got no safeguards. As long as there's DARPA,
yeah,
we're not going to have safeguards. DARPA develops a lot of that stuff, although the CIA develops some of their own. Okay, let's talk about WikiLeaks. 8,761 documents account for the entire hacking capacity of the CIA.
Nope, it does not.
Did they miss a document?
They did.
Okay, which one?
The other, you're speaking purely about the most recent dump from WikiLeaks.
Yeah, they've got more.
They got
it's roughly 1% of what they
1%.
Yeah.
And if you think that what he released currently is damning, you wait until the other 99% of that comes out, and you will be absolutely astonished at what they're doing. Things that you would never have thought about before are going to come to light, and you are going to be absolutely shocked. I guarantee.
Hard to get shocked anymore.
Well, that is true. I mean, I think you're right. I think that we have been shocked for so long that we're starting to become a little bit desensitized to it. But mark my words, this is the tip of the iceberg.
Paul, what do you think about what did come out? I mean,
one thing is, I have several vehicles that do not have computers in them, and I'm pretty happy that I don't, because
right.
they're not hackable. Now, EMP would take them out just because they have electrical systems, but they're not gonna cause me to uncontrollably accelerate out of into a tree. So the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to manually steer and manually brake when the engine dies. I think it's absolutely disturbing, and I think what the only thing more disturbing is about this whole thing is the almost total lack of outcry from the public. People are not freaking out about this.
I agree.
At an appropriate level.
I agree, and I refer back.
That's why I said what I did. We're not shocked anymore. Yeah. We've become so desensitized to this, and as somebody wrote in an article this week, there's no surprises here. We as this person said, we kind of knew they were doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, once again, the conspiracy theorists are proven true. You've heard it so many times already, and you've heard it supposedly debunked so many times that I think people just brush it off.
Yep.
I don't think a conspiracy theorist has a chance anymore. You can't keep up with this stuff. I can't come up with crazy enough ideas to keep up with reality. It just keeps coming. Well, Assange, he ridiculed the CIA. Of course, he got his licks in, but he said, "Hey, you know what? They put all this stuff in one place for this person to get. How dumb is that? It was all located in one place where that person had access to." He's got a point.
You're talking about the Julian Assange having access to what he had and what he leaked?
No, where the guy got it.
The actual server storage of the information was that easy to get into. Assange did mention that, but I don't know that that's the case, because that could have been spread out over several areas. That person with the right clearance just kind of just put it all together. Yeah, they just cut and paste it all together. So and that's not that hard to do. And
right.
There are obviously people that have the clearance to access all of it. So
yeah, I would tend to agree with Paul that even though he accessed it all, it wasn't necessarily all right there. He could have reached out, and let me rephrase that. He did reach out to other facilities from his facility. If it's connected to the internet, you can access it. So even if you got a facility in Nevada, you got one in New York, you got one in Alaska, because they are all connected to a network so that they can be accessed elsewhere, it's a de facto one giant glob of information, no matter what way you cut it.
An interesting dynamic is, I think, coming out of this. And I may be wrong because, like you're saying, there isn't a huge outcry, but I just think people are just, that we have just all decided, relatively speaking, that these people do nefarious things and they spy on us, and we just aren't surprised anymore. And I think there's a certain sense of helplessness that goes with that, because what are we going to do? But the other side of this that's dangerous for the intelligence agencies is there's no sympathy here for the CIA. There's none of this. Edward Snowden was a horrible person and a spy. This is, hey, what are they doing? They're doing something else, and it's not like I'm thinking that all this stuff they're doing is protecting me anyway. I mean, how is it protecting me that they can get a look at me or listen to me through my television set or turn on my iPhone or use it as a listening post? How is that making me safe? I don't think people can see that connection anymore. So that's putting the intelligence communities in a funny position, because the old "we're doing this for you" argument isn't working anymore. At least it's not working for me.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
No, but it's one of those things that's that slow creep has desensitized everybody to this. They're so used to it. They don't see if they see an impact on their personal lives at all, it's pretty negligible. If the TV's been listening to them for the last 3 years, 5 years, whatever, and nothing bad's come out of it, well, most people are just going to brush it off as, oh, well, nothing bad's happened so far. I'm going to go on my merry way. The only way, I think, at this point, at our level of technology, is to become what I would call a neo-Luddite, and just reject all modern technology and go Amish.
Yeah, but you can track that too. You can absolutely track somebody who goes off grid, almost as almost as effectively as if they were on grid. It's not a game of avoidance by non-participation, because even if you do non-participate, you're still participating. The only actual solution to this issue is to remove their ability to engage in the game in the first place. We have allowed,
which is what they're trying to do by releasing this.
I agree with that. Yeah, by releasing the leaked information, the databases, the secrets, they're in effect destroying the government's ability to do what they do to foreigners, to foreign nations. Now, the tool that they were using to listen to that Russian ambassador on that meeting is now destroyed. They can no longer do that. So the only ones they can do it to now are you and me. And that's effective if your goal is to control the population of your own country, but it's not effective if your goal is to play the sentry at the gate, to be the defender of America. It's no longer effective at that. So if they continue to do it, then you have to ask the question, what is their purpose? Is their purpose to defend us or to control us?
Excellent. Yeah, it's an excellent point.
Yes.
Peter, let me ask you. Peter, you still on?
I am.
Let me ask you a question. You travel around, talk to a lot of people. My sense of you. There's a level of it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you, right. So people are already aware that all these things happen. There aren't too many people in the dark anymore that the government spies on everyone.
Sure.
Much. Have you noticed anything out there in the last 8-10 years? I mean, is this affecting America? Is this affecting people? Are they talking about it? Are they worried about it? Or as Paul was saying, are they just kind of shrugging it off?
I think what happens is that nobody talks about it openly until they're sure they're speaking to a like-minded person. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's sort of some subtle stuff, like you see a guy's gang box and has an NRA sticker on it.
Yep.
Okay, so there's like little subtle symbols at somebody, and some of them are overt.
Like a couple of dogs meeting for the first time.
Yeah, we got to sniff each other's butts and figure, okay, that didn't really work. But what I'm saying is that I think sometimes you have to be careful about who you're speaking to. For my end of the world, a lot of the job sites I go to, because I spend a lot of time. I work in construction management. I go to a lot of different job sites. Is a lot of them have union contractors, and which is funny because unions themselves are usually very pro-Democrat for self-serving reasons.
Sure.
But if you talk to the individual members, they really aren't totally on board with everything other than making the union better. You'll find union guys with NRA stickers on their hard hats or whatever. And I think a lot of guys
Reagan learned that.
What's that?
I said Reagan learned that.
Yeah.
He learned how to turn that group.
Oh yeah, so I think once people are like-minded, you find that there's a lot of similar feelings on it. I went to a job site the other day. I go into the superintendent's trailer to check in. He's got Trump stuff all over his walls, and he's wearing a Trump pullover, like a zip-up fleece sweatshirt that says Trump Pence on it. I mean, I've seen him wear it like 3 times that I've been there.
He's full Trump, huh?
You couldn't miss this one if you painted on the outside of the trailer. So I think that's it. I think everybody holds a certain level of concern, but they're becoming increasingly concerned about talking about it in public. And I don't know so much they're afraid of the surveillance agencies. I think they're more afraid of the anti-fascists, just to give it a label,
sure,
because of how violent the people that oppose this stuff are.
Well, that's a good point, because if the 4 of us were presented with a problem, if we couldn't talk about it, we wouldn't be able to solve it, would we?
That is true.
Nope.
And so as long as you're talking about what's the function of all this, as long as people may be aware, I see people get a little crazy on discussion groups online, and they talk about radical things, and I'm not just talking about watering the tree of liberty. I'm just talking about things that are a lot more direct than that. I look at those comments as bait, see who's going to jump on there and go along with them. But the point is that we can't solve this problem if we're afraid of the very entity that we have to get to change things. And that's pretty much what they've done. They've pretty much convinced everyone there's no way. That's what the metadata was all about. They now know everyone in my network being all my friends, my relatives, people I talk with, where I shop, places, that's metadata, but it tells them a lot. There's not going to be any cells forming. It's not like the old days of the militia movement where any of that stuff can happen without people knowing about it. So I think that's a function of it, is to convince people there's no hope, no hope for change. There's nothing you can do. It's like the Iron Triangle. Just you can vote if you want to, and that's fine, but we're going to continue doing as the Iron Triangle does. We're going to continue doing whatever we want to, as the deep state does. It's the same. It's the same
divide
thing.
And conquer. It's just classic divide and conquer.
Yeah, Paul, that's exactly what it is. Well, we got a couple of minutes left. Anybody want to throw out some closing comments?
We're screwed.
Tune in next week.
We're not shut down.
Deleting your browser history is futile.
Well, we don't want to discourage people, but you just have to be aware what the blocks are. We talk about the things that run in the background of our lives that a lot of times we ignore or we don't know about. And it's important to get it open. It's important for people to talk about it. And we're going to have to learn to start doing things more than just every 2 years at the ballot box. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people I read about now are complaining about this administration. But, there's a lot of work left for the rest of us to do between now and, November 2018 to help.
Yeah, and I think just general awareness, the more people are aware, is a big aspect of that. Shows like ours, not to toot our own horn, but and the rise of the alternative media, I think are good things to help combat that.
I agree. Well, it was thank you everybody for tuning in. Come back next week, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time and TK Radio Network, and we'll see what we have on the agenda for that.
Because people have
Thanks, Sparky, Peter, and Paul. It was a great show.
Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.
You like your doctor, you like your plan, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan.
Saddam Hussein has gone to elaborate lengths, spent enormous sums, taken great risks to build and keep weapons of mass destruction.
Did not